College football's back, and we're back on the Big Mountain with a really special guest to talk about the UNLV Fresno State Mountain West game this week. I want to invite and welcome Jason Kelly to the channel. He's going to talk all things UNLV, and my goodness, there's just a few things happening with UNLV right now, but we're going to keep this focused on the game. Jason, welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been a fan of you guys for a while, and I love the fact that we get good coverage of the Mountain West Conference. It's a special conference, and I appreciate it.
Well, we're excited to have you here on the Big Mountain. Tell our viewers where they can find you on whatever socials you're on.
Sure. So I do the Let's Run podcast. It's on Apple and Spotify. If you just type in Let's Run podcast, it's like the third one that comes up. There's a couple of running podcasts that come up.
Okay.
But you can find me on Twitter. That will give you the link to it. It's Jason K Redline at Jason K Redline. And that will give you, I post all of my podcasts on Twitter directly and also on YouTube, which I believe my YouTube channel is just Jason W. Kelly 96, which I probably should change that at some point, but that's what it is for right now. And I cover all things UNLV.
Fantastic. Well, we got the right guy. I got to give a shout out to our friend of the show, that college football guy that connected us. So thank you to Bill. And I will make sure I have your information down in the description so people can find you as well. Let's get into the game. As we know, lots of news this week about UNLV on all kinds of different fronts, but we're here for a game preview. We know Sluka is now out. He is not the starting quarterback for this game. So the biggest question coming into this, and I'm hoping you can help us out, what does Williams look like to get the starting role here? Any sort of information you can give us on what to expect would be fantastic.
Sure. So Malik Williams was recruited before Matthew Sluka was actually a part of the team. He was the first quarterback recruit. He and our offensive coordinator, Brendan Marion, have a very good relationship. And Malik Williams was our starting quarterback through most of the summer and through all of spring ball. He and Ricky White, our star receiver, have a very good connection. Matthew Sluka kind of came in late because of some recruiting stuff. And obviously the whole situation with Matthew Sluka was very unfortunate. However, the majority of players in the locker room, all of them, there's not a single player. And it's not anything necessarily against Matthew Sluka. They're fired up about Malik Williams. He is a dual threat transfer out of Campbell who has more first-team reps in practice with our players than Matthew Sluka ever did.
Yeah.
And he and Ricky White in particular have a very deep friendship. They did NIL events together over the summer. And if you look at Matthew Sluka, he wasn't getting the ball to Ricky White. I mean, he was absolutely fantastic at running. He's maybe one of the best running college football quarterbacks I've ever seen. But what he couldn't do was get the ball to our best player. And so will Malik Williams do that? I know that Ricky White personally has been putting out statements and talking to people around the program that he is more confident in Malik Williams than he was in Matthew Sluka. And certainly the team has galvanized itself around Malik Williams in a way that really surprised me. I didn't expect them to be so quickly, F that old guy. We're going to go onto the new blood here. We are happy with the guy that we have. I wouldn't expect a drop off offensively in terms of overall production between the two players, if I'm being honest.
Well, and if he's going to provide more of a passing game, and that's an if, we don't know that, but if he's going to provide more of a passing game and he still provides that dual threat as a runner as well, I don't want to be too high on him, and I don't want to beat a guy when he's down in Matthew Sluka. That's not what we're trying to do here. But I am trying to figure out where this game's going to go. So, and everything that I have read points kind of towards the up for Williams. Now, there's a reason Sluka won the starting role and was the starter. So clearly, the coaches thought that Sluka was the player to get them the wins. But to your point, he was not getting the ball to Ricky Williams for whatever reason. And Ricky Williams is one of the best daggone wide receivers in the entire conference and even getting national attention, and rightfully so. Very strong receiver. So if you have that type of outside threat, you've got to utilize that. You got to utilize all the weapons. And even with the great start UNLV has had, it's almost like there could be even more to see here. So really interesting. I'll let you keep going on the offense here for UNLV. Anything else you want to point out? I'll talk a little bit then about the Bulldog defense.
Sure. I would just say that the number one strength that UNLV had going into this year was in terms of just talent between Jacob DeJesus, Kaleo Ballanguy, Casey Kane, Damian McDaniel. Like we have a very good wide receiver, tight end core. And yet, despite it being our best strength of talent on the roster, it was not a part of our offense.
Yeah.
And so, will Hodge Malik Williams do that? I would argue we have the best receiving core in the Mountain West. I really would. And the
Yeah.
fact that, and I understand that other teams may disagree with that, but so I'm not trying to say that, that's objective and fact, but I really believe that.
Yeah.
And so will Hodge Malik Williams be able to take advantage of that? The players certainly seem to think so. All the team captains, Ricky White, Jackson Woodard, have both put out public statements saying, about dang time. They seem to be very confident in him. And so I feel incredibly confident in our offense. And I think that anybody can rush well in the go-go offense. I don't think the rushing attack, there was reports about Michael Allen, our fourth string running back, also leaving the program.
Right.
That was all about play time. It had
Right.
nothing to do with NIL. And that's confirmed by him. I'm not doing unnamed sources. That's from the player.
Right.
Anybody can run well in this offense. And so I genuinely believe that the UNLV offense will have no problem at least maintaining what they were already doing. There's a chance it could get better, but you got to prove it to me first.
For sure. Well, and speaking of the rushing game there, I'll talk a little bit about the Bulldogs defense. So UNLV here, their average rush per game is 293 yards. I mean, that's a lot of rushing yards. Of course, some of that coming from Sluka. I joked after the Kansas game. I think they coated him in Vaseline the way he was just getting around and breaking tackles and all that kind of stuff. But there are a lot of rushing yards here for UNLV early on. We talked about maybe some of the issues with the passing game. The defense for the Bulldogs are only allowing 121 rush yards per game. Yes, they've played Michigan, great start to the season for them. They lost 30-10, but put up a good showing there against a very good national, the national champion from last year. Yes, they've had some turnover, but they only allowed 30 points to that team. That's not too shabby. After that, of course, they've had Sac State, New Mexico State, and New Mexico, but the New Mexico offense also is a very good offense. I mean, underrated. People don't know how good that offense truly is. Unfortunately, they shoot themselves in the foot with their penalties sometimes. But so I'm anxious to see here the defense of the Bulldogs versus this rushing game for UNLV, especially when you look at the stats. And again, it's different teams playing different teams, but my goodness, the defense of the Bulldogs here is very stout when it comes to rush defense. They have 17 interceptions on the season and 3 fumble recoveries on the season, so they're able to turn the ball over as well. But for me, the game is going to be had on the other side of the ball. So I want to hear from you about the UNLV defense, a defense that I was very high on coming into the season. They have not disappointed me. And I want to talk about, everybody knows who, Steve were here, he'd be talking about him, Mikey Keene. I think this is the story of the game, the UNLV defense against really the top quarterback in the Mountain West. So I'll let you go first with the D, what's impressed you. And I'm going to give some love to our buddy Mikey Keene.
So I would harbor a guess that, looking over the schedule, Mikey Keene's the best quarterback we're going to play this year. I think he's easily the best quarterback in the Mountain West, in my view.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of respect between the UNLV defense, talking to the guys and seeing kind of what they're saying. Like they are very aware of his prowess and his ability. Our defense is headlined by, the defensive line is not necessarily the strength. There's some promise there. There's some capability, but I have not been very impressed by the defensive line. For me, it's the linebacking core.
Yeah.
Jackson Woodard, he's about as good of a defensive captain as you could possibly hope for in college football. So he's kind of the leader. But then there's also, guys like Tony Grimes and Jalen Catalon.
Yes.
He's a transfer from the Big 12. He has three interceptions on the year so far. Last year, our defense, our secondary especially, was just getting torched by the end of the year especially. And really the Fresno game is what started that. This year, Coach Odom has really put an emphasis on defensive depth and also just on more talent. There's even in the starters, it's not just about depth. There's a lot more talent there. The big question mark for UNLV is a guy named Marcel McDuffie. who is one of our best players on the defensive side of the ball. He was injured in the Utah Tech game, but there is a lot of optimism. He will be a game time decision. But there's a lot of optimism that he will be returning. This UNLV defense believes that it can slow down Mikey Keene. It really does. Will they? Again, this is the first game of the season where I would say both teams have played a team of similar talent level.
Yeah.
And so we don't really know until we know. This game is going to be very telling, setting up the Mountain West hierarchy for the rest of the year. And the defense is where it's going to start and end with the defense. Because I think the offense is going to be able to put up enough points to win this game. It's all about the defense, and the defense thinks they can do it, and they're way more talented and way more disciplined than they were last year. But who knows?
Well, I completely agree with you. I think it's all about this side of the ball, the UNLV defense versus the Fresno offense. Who wins this side of the ball on either team is going to determine the outcome of this game. I totally agree with you. When you look at Mikey Keene here, I mean, he's just off. He just looks. You can tell he's a veteran. His presence in the pocket, just control of the game. It's really impressive. He's 67% right now for his completion. He's 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So those numbers aren't great, but just a masterful game plan that they have for him. And he is in complete control. And you mentioned Catalan, or is it Catalan? Is that how you say it?
Catalan, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Really impressive. I was anxious to see what he was going to look like coming into the season. And he's looked fantastic. He has several turnovers and things. But you look at the receiver depth here for the Bulldogs. They've got it. I mean, Delina has been great. I've been high on Moss since last year. They have Sharp as well. Those 3 combined are at 100 yards. So they've got multiple. It's not just one guy that you have to protect. Mikey Keene's going to distribute this ball all over the field. So it will take the entire defense to kind of hold this back. The one knock I've had on the offense for the Bulldogs has been the running game. Yes, they're able to break a few here and there, but I just haven't seen a ton for them. Now, I will say the New Mexico State game, just complete domination across the board. The running game was strong. Their defense was amazing. I mean, it's a shutout for crying out loud. I'm still not fully confident on the running game of the Bulldogs. So if they have to fully rely on Mikey Keene, and this UNLV defense can really shut down the pass game, that is where we're going to get the tail of the tape on this game and seeing who wins. I mean, Fresno State's scoring 35 points a game, 406 yards per game, just a prolific offense, in the top 5 in the Mountain West. So I'm anxious to see one of the top offenses versus one of the top defenses. So with that, I mean, any intangibles, anything else you want to talk about? And then I'd love to hear a game prediction for you if you're able to give us one. So any intangibles? I mean, clearly this game's at UNLV. So, how are we feeling about that?
So I would say that this is very weird for UNLV football to be in the media position that we've been in over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, with the decision that we're staying in the Mountain West Conference and the Sluka situation, and there's a lot of anger and angst among the fan base right now. I myself had a very heated spaces last night where I was railing on our athletic department. But I would expect, with all the media exposure that we've gotten, the student section, the students, we're going to have 10,000 students at the game, which is unheard of at UNLV. We are going to have probably our highest attendance. I would expect it maybe to be even higher than the Mountain West Championship game was last year.
Okay.
That's a little bit of a reach, but I think that's completely possible. You could see 34,000 people at the game at the very highest, but you're going to get 28, 29 at the very least. Probably 30 would be my guess. So it's going to be one of the highest attended games. The team is focused is all heck. They don't really care about this conference realignment stuff. These guys most of them are leaving next year or the year after anyway. So what do they care?
Yeah.
I think that this is the biggest game in the history of UNLV football, the history of the program. Bigger than any game Randall Cunningham played, bigger than the Mountain West Championship game last year. We're going to have TV eyeballs on. Everybody in Vegas is freaking out right now. And the one thing that could help and really change the tenor of the conversation around UNLV is a big win. So in terms of intangibles, I would expect the Rebels to be a little jumpy early. I would expect there to be a little too much energy going on. I would expect it to be the best home crowd we've ever had. And ultimately, I don't think that the intangible situation is going to hurt the team whatsoever. Ultimately, I think it'll hurt it a little bit early. You mentioned a score prediction.
Yes.
I was on the I was on the Beware of the Bulldogs podcast, trying
Okay.
to cover as many bases as I can because I want the Mountain West media to kind of all ships rise. When the water goes up, all ships rise.
Yep.
So I'm trying to make sure we have a media conglomerate that's connected. When I was on that podcast, I said Fresno State 31, UNLV 30. I think it's that kind of game,
Yep.
and I will stand by that prediction. I think Fresno State has the ever so slight advantage, and I said that before Matthew Sluka was gone.
Okay.
But I actually don't think that Matthew Sluka being gone changes my mind at all. I have Fresno State as the tilt favorite at the moment. Even as a UNLV person, that hurts to say, but that is my prediction as of right now. Tilt Fresno.
I love it. And we did our pick episode Wednesday evening. I actually took the Rebels here with the money line. The spread has been all over the place for the last few days. I'm like, I'm not even touching the spread. It's so close, it's a point or whatever. But so I went money line UNLV, but I'm with you. I would be shocked if this isn't at least within a field goal, maybe 1-2 point type of thing. I am expecting a phenomenal game. You can't ask for more. Let's put all this other stuff aside. Let's just watch football, enjoy it for what it is, why we cover it, why we're talking about it, for crying out loud. And the Mountain West, talked about, as the water rises, all ships rise. The Mountain West has a great schedule here. They've got Boise versus Wazoo as well with this game, and some other in-conference games. I know Wyoming and Air Force aren't doing great, but they're usually fun games, although there may not be too much scoring. It might be somebody mentioned it might be an 0-2 game in overtime on our live show there with the Pokes and the Falcons. But hey, we're getting into conference play, and you can't ask for more on the Mountain. So Jason, we thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm really appreciative of you guys. Keep covering the Mountain West Conference for as long as this conference stays around the way it is, and even into the future. This is a conference worth covering. It's got great fan bases that are passionate, and so thank you guys for what you do. Go Rebels, and I just appreciate the time.
Absolutely. We thank you for coming on. With that, guys, make sure you give this one a like. Make sure you follow Jason. Subscribe if you like our content. We'll see you guys next time on the Big Mountain.